Now, we're not trying to say these are the only places that are bubbling in the world. We are focusing on places that are promoted by the Rams, and because they have a clear history of going through the vicious cycle we've discussed in another video, and therefore that doesn't mean there aren't other areas in the world that are not also bubbling.
Good morning and welcome to Retire Early Lifestyle, the next 5 big foreigner bubble countries and cities that will make expat history. We do extensive research on the subjects that we talk about. We look at what the countries are doing and the politics. We also look at patterns, statistics, and other data in the world that would help bring us to these final conclusions. Plus, the amount of vloggers and what they are saying is also a good sign that a city and a country is going through the foreigner vicious cycle. Vloggers tend to work in trend cycles. So let's get started. Where will the next big foreigner bubble countries in the world be? Number 5, Italy. Italy already has thousands of foreigners living there permanently, but this is not causing a bubble in the same sense we have been reporting them. They live throughout the country, went on their own terms, and are living a comfortable lifestyle, probably pretty close to the local levels. These foreigners did not move to Italy at the same 5-year time span, or on a whim or enticement from the retire abroad media. Italy is not even on the Rams top 10 list for 2024. So why do we think it's going to bubble in price? The data, trends, and patterns are telling us that more and more people want to move to Italy right now. It's a trend that we've already been seeing since we were there in 2019 with the selling of the €1 homes. Most of these folks won't last, however, and it's because these homes are in a tiny village and town with absolutely nothing to do. They'll buy their home, fix it up, live in it for a while, and they'll maybe try and sell it or just use it for vacations. The trend we're seeing starts with curiosity and checking it out on a research vacation trip. Italy, by the way, was the second most visited country in the world in 2023. It surpassed Spain and France, which both usually tie for the top spot, while Italy normally comes in 3rd to 5th place. But not last year in 2023, it outperformed both countries. Italy has seen positive improvements in the political arena, and perhaps it will continue to move up in a good way for the people. This also remains to be seen. Italy is moving out of stage 1 and into stage 2 of the foreigner vicious cycle. It's not bubbling except for in the tourist zones where everyone goes, but people generally don't move right in tourist zones because it's already overpriced, and they also have lost much of their original culture and flavor. Italy may not bubble for a while. It may have 2 to 3 years left to go before that happens. But right now, vloggers are talking about how cheap Italy is in the off-the-beaten-path areas, and we all know where that leads to. And that's another reason why Italy is going to see a price bubble. But Italians will not keep to themselves about it either. Italians are very vocal about how they feel, and they will complain about the prices if they get too out of hand. Just saying. We hope we're not right about Italy, but everything in our data and research is pointing to Italy being another foreigner bubble spot. All of Italy is beautiful, so expats will move to the mountains and the coastal towns. And we think by the end of 2024, we'll begin to see the handful of towns that are getting into the limelight by the vlogs. So we'll keep an eye on Italy, and we'll update our viewers with new information and interesting tidbits as they come in. Number 4, Spain. Spain has always been one of the darlings for Europeans for vacationing and residing there, especially the Brits. Spain is a beautiful, diverse country with Spanish influences and charms that give it that special uniqueness and qualities that people love. But Spain in the last year or so has been receiving more attention from North Americans. Portugal did not work out for them for one reason or another, so they'll try Spain next. As a reminder, Portugal's bubble popped here just recently, and it's recovering from that. The news is more people are leaving Portugal than going there now, and sadly, it's what happens with these RAM-focused places. Portugal went through the 4 stages of the foreigner vicious cycle in a matter of about 8 to 10 years. Anyway, with the new foot traffic of Americans and Brits, Spain will continue to rise in prices, and taking a quick peek at Barcelona and Madrid, rents, the top places where foreigners go, the rents have already skyrocketed to U.S. prices. Some areas in Spain are seeing rent stress, as they call it, where prices get out of hand and tenants can no longer afford the rent. But here's what it is in a nutshell. Investors coming in and buying up properties, fixing them up, and renting them out to high-income foreigners. Rent stress typically happens in the areas the foreigners want to live in. Portugal recently saw the same phenomenon. Gentrification is a thing in Spain. And here's the reason why people from USA and other expensive first world countries move to Spain. Nothing else left to say here. This screenshot speaks for itself. Spain is in about the 3rd stage of the foreigner vicious cycle. Spain is a huge country, and when prices get too high in the cities, people will start branching out like they did in Portugal. Probably the end of 2026, Spain will begin to bubble heavily and pop not soon after. Number 3, Costa Rica. Costa Rica is an anomaly in that it's been bubbling for years. Costa Rica was one of the first countries that the Rams ever promoted back in the 1970s and 80s. Costa Rica is the perfect example of the gringo vicious cycle that keeps going and going and going. Let me give you an example. When Cuenca, Ecuador came to a bubble, it popped and the bubble completely burst, and it ran out of steam, so to speak. Expats fled and prices went down. But with Costa Rica, the bubble gets a pinhole in it and only loses a little bit of steam and just revives itself. It's the only country that can withstand the constant foreigner cycle. However, it's not without all the negatives that come with it, such as high prices, foreigner resentment, and high crime. So it will continue to bubble. When it froths, a little steam will come out, but that's it. So basically, it's been in number 3 and 4 of the gringo vicious cycle stages forever. Ever since they've been promoting it. Number 2, Colombia. Colombia has been receiving huge foreigner traffic since about 2018, and ironically, we listed Colombia being in the top 5 bubble countries back in 2019. But then the 2020 pandemic hit and people stopped traveling so much. And that is the only reason why the bubble did not pop sooner.
Next city,
Medellin.
Medellin has been pumped for going on at least 8 years that I can remember, maybe even close to a decade. Colombia had a stigma attached to it from the really bad times in the 80s. And a lot of these Latin countries have that, by the way. It's not just Colombia. Colombia was in the news because of the big drug guy and all that, but there's a lot of stuff going on in a lot of other places all over Latin America all the time that's similar. The thing is that Medellin, because of that, has taken a little longer, but it's now coming into its own. The prices have already been really frothy and spiking in a specific RAM promoted area of Medellin, especially in that area. It's at a point now where the crime rates are now starting to show up. They're just slowly, and remember, the crime rates can show up slowly. It can start out with just more street crime and then more home invasions.
That's how it started out with Cuenca. I remember it was always like people pulling off jewelry as you're walking down the street.
More street crime and then more violent.
Snatching your cell phone, and then several years later it became home invasions.
Yeah, there's a stepping way that it happens. Prices in a specific RAM promoted area of El Poblado have gone higher and higher. Again, the prices have room to branch out from that area, but because it's a really big city, they may not, and so it may stay focused on that, or it may branch out. But I think that in time they will branch out. It just may take a lot longer.
I think a lot of foreigners are afraid to really branch out.
Well, and for good reason.
Yeah.
And especially once the rich foreigner label is attached and you're profiled that way as a foreigner, it's bad. It's bad for everyone. Everybody else that comes after you that doesn't act like you, unfortunately gets labeled as one of you, because you look like them. Unless you go outside of their area and you get to know the locals and you stay on a local level and you like that. So, okay, and you stay away from those bubbles. Okay, so next city.
But lo and behold, here we are 4 years later, and it's starting to froth and bubble, and it's just about ready to pop. Why is Colombia picking up speed again? Well, it's because the cheap spiel still works by the Rams and the bloggers. Americans move abroad for cheaper cost of living, and that is what is being pumped to them so heavily right now is cheap rents, cheap cost of living, and how great Medellin and other cities in Colombia are to live. Apartments that were locally priced at $300 in Medellin just a few years ago are now $1,000 a month. You would be hard-pressed to find an apartment of size or in good location for under $800 in Medellin, Colombia right now. This is typical of what happened in Cuenca, Ecuador. Bloggers have been coming out since last year claiming gentrification and resentment of the foreigner is happening on a grand scale in Colombia. And we all know when local resentment begins, so does the vicious cycle of crimes against the expats, and that is exactly what's happening right now. Medellin is just getting out of stage 3 and moving into stage 4 of the gringo vicious cycle, and will most likely pop in 2024. Number 1, Mexico. Mexico has the biggest American population of expats in the world. Because Mexico is a huge country, it can withstand a lot of the pressure of the rent stress. It's somewhat like Costa Rica in that sense, but it still has bubbles that are going to pop in select cities and towns. We also think and hope that the expats do try to negotiate for better rents, even though it's not at the level it should be. Mexico City went all the way through the gringo vicious cycle stages, and it will probably pop in late 2024. Lots of resentment going on, lots of crimes against the foreigners, and prices going out of this world. This only happened because during the pandemic, Mexico was one of the few, and I mean few countries that allowed foreigners to enter without any requirements that trespassed against people's bodily autonomy. And so it goes without saying that Mexico received tons of traffic, especially from nomads working from home, because in America during the pandemic, more businesses were allowing their employees to work from home. Remember that? So Mexico City probably became the nomad capital of the world. I mean, people were moving there in droves. Lake Chapala, Ajijic, Mexico was one of those hot spots where it literally got so inundated with foreigners that it has never fully recovered. All the real estate investors fled. Expats fled. The vloggers fled that were bragging about how cheap it was. And now it's just a hugely overpriced spot on the map. People don't move abroad to pay more in rent. they move abroad to pay less in rent and less to buy housing. It will take some time for prices to settle back down to almost normal. So who is left in Lake Chapala? The people still there are expats that own property and are long-haul expats. That's what we call them. They actually stay permanently abroad. There are some expats that stay permanently abroad. And of course, new expats always head on over there, see the prices, and get sticker shock. We told our viewers back in 2020 that Lake Chapala was seeing a huge rise in prices and crime and that it would pop soon, and it did.
Okay, and the next one is a smaller place, Lake Chapala, Mexico. Now, Mexico in itself is a large country, and Americans have been going to Mexico for 3 decades, so that means there's a lot of Americans in Mexico, and that also means that there's going to be a variety of different cities where there's a high number of Americans or gringos or what have you. However, there are spots that are flaring up at the moment and bubbling at the moment, just depending on how many bloggers and that kind of thing. So Lake Chapala is the place where now the prices have pretty much topped out, and the reports of crime has started to trickle out a little bit. You know, and then again, just like Vilcabamba, Ecuador, when the crime rates really got going, they got pretty bad. But again, then it just quieted down fairly quickly. But you know, people. Okay, so yeah, Mexico's got different cities. So any one of the cities could be, you know, at any stage of the bubble.
Now, for those who don't know, the final stage when the bubble pops is expats flee and the place dies down until the next wave of new foreigners. And just like clockwork, North Americans move to the same handful of cities wherever they go. So with that, we think Mexico City will be the next bubble to pop in Mexico and will probably happen in 2024. To recap, here are the 5 places that we think will see expat foreigner bubbles in 2024 through 2026. Mexico, Colombia, Costa Rica, Spain, and Italy. And obviously there are others around the world such as Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia. They're all ready to explode as well.
You look at Panama, you look at Mexico, you look at Costa Rica, now the DR. Every single one of these places have gone through this cycle that we call Gringo Vicious Cycle. Here in Panama, the Gringo Vicious Cycle that we've discussed previously, when it comes into full swing, the crime rates spike. The prices spike and the crime rates spike. And when the crime rates spike, the gringos flee. When the gringos flee, the prices pop.
So thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.